In this video, we're going to learn how to name basic geometric figures, points, lines, planes, rays, and segments. So let's go ahead and get started. First, we have a point. All right, so a point indicates a location and it has no size. And the way you name a point is just by using the capital letter next to the point. And so we have points A, B, C, and D. So I could just call this point A. Or if I wanted to name all of them, I could just say point A, B, C, and D. So the way you name a point is just by the capital letter that is next to the point. All right. Next, we have a line. It is a straight path. It has no thickness. It goes continuously in opposite directions. And so that's why we have the arrows here, because it goes in opposite directions continuously or infinitely. All right. And it contains an infinite amount of points. So again, that is why we have the arrows here. And the way we name a line, we use any two letters on the line. And so I have three letters here. I could name this line, line AB. And I would put a line over it, have my two arrows. I could call this line BC or AC. All right, with the line over it. Or if it has a lowercase letter next to the line, we could also name it using that lowercase letter here. So I could call this line L. All right. Now let's look at a plane. A plane is a flat surface that extends without ends. So if you think of a sheet of paper, of course a sheet of paper stops, but a plane, it just keeps going. So kind of like a line keeps going endlessly in both directions. A plane does the same thing, but it's a flat surface. It has no thickness and it contains an infinite amount of lines. So line contains an infinite amount of points. Plane contains an infinite amount of lines. So let's look at naming a plane. So just like when we name a line, we could use the lowercase letter here. To name a plane, it would be the uppercase letter. So we could call this plane P, or whatever uppercase letter that you see that does not have the points there. So I can only call this plane P because these other letters here indicate a point. Or if I wanted to use those points, I would use three letters, at least three letters on that plane. So I could call this plane, and you could actually draw a plane. I could call this plane ABC, or I could call it plane BCD, as long as I use three letters on that plane. And so once again, we use three letters on the plane, or you can label it as the letter that is not a point. So only point P because it does not have an actual point next to it. All right, naming a line, two letters on that line, or the lowercase letter. And a point is just one uppercase letter. And so we've learned how to name a point, a line, and a plane. Now we're looking at a segment and a ray. So a segment is a part of a line that has two endpoints. And so remember, a line goes continuously in both directions. It has those arrows on the end. A segment has two endpoints, and so it stops. And so the way we name a segment is by the two endpoints. And our endpoints here are A and B. And then we put a line or a segment over it. Notice I do not put the arrows. And so with a line, you have the arrows. With a segment, you do not. You label it using the two endpoints. All right. For a ray it has one endpoint and all the other endpoints on one side of that endpoint. And so we have an endpoint here, and then we have an arrow that indicates that this ray keeps going continuously in that direction. And so we label the ray by using just two letters of that ray. And so I could call this ray AB. And then my first letter should actually be the endpoint of the ray. And then I want to draw my ray above it here with my endpoint above the actual endpoint with the actual ray above those two letters. I could call this ray AC as well. All right. So I have to start it with A because A is my endpoint for the ray. And so now right here, I have some problems that I would like for you to try. So the first one, these are points. Let me put a line underneath. All right, so name these points. We have a figure here. We want to name this. We have another figure. So we have 5 items here that I would like for you to label. So go ahead and pause the video and try to label these items on your own. All right, so I have the answers here for the problems I wanted, or the items I wanted you to label. Again, with the point, you just use the capital letter for the point. For the line, you can use any 2 uppercase letters on that line. So I have a few here. I have line M-O, N-O, and O-P. But again, you could use any 2 letters. I could have used M-P as well. So 2 uppercase letters on that line. And one thing I forgot to add, if I had a lowercase letter here, so if I had, let's say, N, well, I don't want to use N. If I have L, I like L, I could call this line L. So again, if it has a lowercase letter, you could call it that lowercase letter as well. Next, we have a plane. This N here does not have a point, so it is not a point. So I could call this plane N, or I could have drawn an actual plane in front. And I could use 3 letters, or at least 3 letters on that plane. If it has more, that is okay, but you only need 3 letters to name the point, so make sure they're capital letters. Next, we have a segment, and so I used the 2 endpoints here to name the segment XY. And then for the ray, if you notice here, my endpoint is D, and so when I write or when I label it, I will put DC. So my endpoint is above the D, or you could also write it the other way, CD, but your endpoint will still have to be above the D. Most of the time, you will see it from left to right, and so your endpoint would normally be first, and so I labeled that first DC as well. So hopefully you got them correct, and hopefully you learned how to identify points, lines, planes, segments, and rays. And I would like to thank you for learning with me.